Stan Lai. Wow. What a inspiring conversation. Stan is a playwright, over 40 plays, very, very, very popular in Asia and in Shanghai and Taipei, can barely walk the streets without getting noticed. We talk about the role of the play of the writer versus the director, what happens with the blank page, what happens to these characters. I heard him in another interview say that he asked somebody else, how do they write a play? And they said, they create the characters and then they decide. That process, it fascinates me how art happens that way. He wrote a book, Creativity, which is originally in Chinese, but it's been 5 years and it's now in English. It was released November of 5. We talk about that saying and that process, but just great insight from a playwright and a director. And he's also written 2 movies. How it gets done, the process. I'm eternally interested in that whole process and how it differs from person to person, but really open, really genuine, just really smart man. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much, Stan. I hope one day I get to meet you face to face. And thank you for watching and listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because I was working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. I'd ask you to be yourself, Stan. Thank you so much for your time. Who's your favorite NBA player of all time?
All time? I would say Larry Bird.
Really?
Yeah. He was very inspirational to me.
Yeah, very inspirational.
How's that?
So are you a Celtic fan?
Not really. No, I'm not. I'm a Warriors fan. I always have been.
Right. Yeah. You're Warriors, Golden State.
Yeah,
of course, that's where you went to school.
Those were the days, man. I mean, like, you can't beat Bird versus Magic. I don't know how no matter how good these guys are these days, I don't know. They jump and they dunk and whatever, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. And there's a lot of new clips going on about how much Larry Bird, how he trash talked a lot and how he dominated like that. And I think a new generation is kind of seeing that now because they're not used to that because, they had high shorts and, it just wasn't as, it looked aesthetically a lot differently than it does now.
Yes, yeah. And there's no 3-point line for a lot of the time.
That's right. A lot of that time there wasn't. Right. Yeah. He would walk into the 3-point competition. I remember hearing these stories. Charles Barkley, I think, said it, for the All-Star game. And he would walk in and say, okay, who's going to be second place in this competition today?
That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah. And as a kid, did you play as well? You were born here in DC.
Play.
You still play.
Yeah. So I've been playing 40 years, just every week. I try to get a full court run, and I have my guys in Shanghai. I have my guys in Taipei, and they look out for me. I'm the elder on the team. So
I say.
Yeah.
It's good to get that in. It's such a beautiful sport. It's so strategic and it's so, it looks simple, but there's a lot going on. The coaches don't get enough, credit for what they're doing with the timeouts and the plays, etc.
And when you're playing, it's like a meditation. It's like you gotta see everything. You gotta see. I was privileged to watch Magic Johnson in person from a very good seat.
Whoa.
I'm seeing him grab a rebound, dribble down, and then throw a 90-foot no-look pass.
No-look pass.
And I'm seeing, wow, this guy, he has eyes all over. He knows where everybody is at every single moment, and that's something.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza Dash MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza Dash platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. Yeah, I heard him say once, you got to get to a point in your career where you let the game come to you a bit.
That's right. You know, Jordan said that too. Yeah.
Jordan said it too. Yeah. And is there similarity with jazz? Because you're a big jazz fan as well.
I'm a big jazz fan. Oh yeah. And I use improvisation in my own work so much. You know, it's there's an art there, and it's a discipline of letting go while you're very focused. You know, and we can talk about that because it sounds like a contradiction. You know,
it does.
But
so you've written over 40 plays, Stan. I don't know what do you do with the blank page? Did it ever frighten you?
Never frightened me. If there's a blank page, I just let it be, you know, and just, you know, some other day it'll come, you know. But no, blank pages don't frighten me. If sometimes I'm close to performance, you know, because the situation I'm in Asia is very different from in America, because sometimes my tickets are already all sold before the play is even written, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's pressure. You know, that's talking about pressure. You know, it's like, I mean, I'm so grateful my audience, you know, loves me so much that they do that. But
that's wonderful.
How much pressure is that to deliver? You know, and to deliver something that they want to see time and again. You know, it's a lot of pressure. So, you know, when I get down to close to opening night, it's definitely nerve wracking. You know, and you need a lot of discipline to get by that. You know,
yes, you do.
Yeah.
I saw an interview with you and you asked one of the masters how they write a play, and you were embarrassed by the question, but they said they create the characters and then the characters decide.
Actually, it was the novelist. It was one of the most famous novelists in the Chinese language. His name is Jing Yong. He wrote all these swordsman novels, you know, the classic swordsman novels. And I was sitting next to him at a dinner, you know, on a round table, and this is what a privilege. And I asked him, and once that question came out of my mouth, I said, God, can you say a stupider question? You know, I mean, it's like sitting next to Michael Jordan and saying, can you tell me how to play basketball?
Yeah, how do you dribble?
What's your secret for playing basketball? You know? And he was so gracious to answer me. And it was such a mind-boggling answer. He says, I spend all the time on the characters. And once I'm done with the characters, they know how to write. They write the novel themselves. Wow. They know what to do. You know, and that's what I do when I'm working with actors, you know, on a new work. You know, so it resonated with me.
So tell me about that. When you create a character, is it sometimes modeled after somebody? Is it completely from organic origin?
It's always modeled after somebody. You have to, you know, but it's not, sometimes it's not conscious, you know. It's like you create these characters and, you know, and either they're from your life or they're from anything you've seen, like a movie or a TV show, or even someone on the street that you sort of notice, but it's someone. It's got to be someone, or a composite of a lot of people. And that's when I talk to actors, when they want to know more about the role, I can sometimes use these people as an example, you know, and because some roles are not very easy to understand. And I say, well, put yourself in this position, this guy, blah, blah, blah. And I will use someone I know to talk to the actors, and it works.
The process, though, Stan, please explain to me how these characters that you've created create the story. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, there's so much art there, right? There's so much imagination.
Yeah. Well, in my early days, when my actors had more time to work with me, and they
Mm.
were willing to use improvisation to work in the studio with me, and they just gave me their all. What I would do was I would set up a rough, you might want to call it a rough scenario, but it would be a story. There would be a story. My improvs have stories. They're not like, I mean, I've said it before. You can't improvise on nothing. You can't. I
Mm.
can't say, Joey, go. You know,
Right.
you can't
I need
just go.
something.
You got to say, Stan, give me a topic, right?
Right.
So improv doesn't work without a topic. It's the same with jazz. They're playing. If you don't know jazz, you don't know what they're doing. But
Right.
if you know jazz, you know that there is a base. There is a base that they're working from. Otherwise, they can't improvise. So it's the same with me. When I'm working with my actors, I will give them. I will develop a character with them, and then they will be part of a story that I tell them. So the story is not necessarily complete. You know, sometimes it's like let's say there's four acts in the story. Maybe I've thought about acts one and four, but I have no idea what acts two and three are. You know, and so we start. They start developing the character. I start developing scenarios for them to
Hmm.
improvise on in the studio. So, like for instance, perhaps my most famous work is called "Secret Love in Peach Blossom Land."
Yes.
It was performed in America at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. It's coming up to its 40th anniversary in a
Wow.
couple of months. So I have four different
Amazing.
groups performing the play
Wow. Wow.
in China and in Taiwan. And I look back to there's an iconic scene in that play because it's about the Secret Love in Peach Blossom Land is two plays, and it's there are two theater groups who are booked into a theater and they can't find the theater manager. All right, if that makes any sense to you. Okay, so it's
Hmm.
a comedy. You know, it's like, hey, we're here tonight. No, it's our space tonight. You know, you got to go. So let's find the theater manager. They can't find him. So it's like like Joey. Someone comes into your studio right now and says, "Sorry, man, this is I booked this space," and you say, "No, I'm talking to Stan Lai," yeah. And that's what it's like. So the Secret Love is a very serious. You would call it a tragedy, a modern tragedy about two lovers who meet in Shanghai, but then never meet again because of the war. And
Hmm.
and and the funny thing about the story is that both of them go to Taiwan. You know, this is in 1949, where my parents, when the civil war in China between the communists and the nationalists, and 2 million people went to Taiwan, and
Hmm.
these 2 million people never were able to contact their families, their parents, their
Wow.
lovers, yeah, for 40 years. So
Wow.
I put these two people in the same city, but they don't know that they're both there. And so they have their own lives. And finally, in the final scene, the guy he finds out that the woman all these years was in Taipei because now they can travel, but he's sick, so he's in the hospital. So he puts out this advertisement in the newspaper, and 5 days later, she answers the ad. So there's an
Wow.
iconic scene where the two lovers, you know, and you saw them in their early 20s, and now they're in their 60s. The man is dying. You know, it's a very sweet scene, and we improvised it only once because that one time was perfect.
Hmm.
It's like I have a scene. I don't have the lines. I don't have dialogue.
Interesting.
So the actors they've been working on this play for months, and finally I said, okay, today we're going to do the hospital scene. So let's do it. So the male actor Jing Shiji he turned out to be one of the greatest actors of the Chinese stage and film, and the woman was my wife Nai Chu, who later turned out to produce all of my works,
Hmm.
but she was really fantastic on stage. So I said, okay, you guys, we're in the room now. Knock on the door. Nurse will let you in. The wife, because the guy has a wife, will leave. The two of you there. So just sit down, you have your present, you brought a present, and say whatever you want. Just don't cry. You know, I was saying, I hate it if you guys start sobbing. You know, I'm gonna kill you if you start sobbing. So we set up the scene. It was in my living room, by the way. We didn't even have a proper studio in those days. This was 1986. And Naichu knocked on the door. The nurse opened the door and she said, excuse me, is there Mr. Zhang in this room? And he sees him. He's on a wheelchair. Oh, and then the wife says, but the nurse says, oh, Mrs. Zhang, I can help you with the bill downstairs at the, at the front desk. She said, I can pay the bill tomorrow. I can. Oh, I see. So she goes. So you see, the nurse gets the wife to leave. The two of them are there. And what happens next? I tell you, I couldn't write it as a writer, because it's so beautiful. What they just sit down and they don't say much. They just, there's not much to say. It's like 40 years and the love of your life, and then you don't see them again, and then 40 years later they just, oh, you're, how's your health? Yeah, oh, and then they finally work their way slowly into more personal things. Like she says, oh, I became a grandmother last year, which shows she's married. Okay. And then, so it's like, finally they start saying things like, so where do you live? And she says, well, when we first came, Joey, what city are you in? I'm sorry.
Tampa, Florida.
You're in Florida. Okay. I don't know the street names there, but it would be like if you were in New York, let's say. She would say, well, when we first came, we lived in Queens, and then we moved to Brooklyn, and then he says, oh yeah, I started on Midtown, and then we moved to Queens. It's like you wow. See these two people, they're in the same city, but they just can't find each other, and the scene ends very beautifully, and she goes, and that's it, and that's what, for some reason, that scene is so powerful. It's been playing for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's one example of improvisation. And what I want to say about that, and what I want to say about the discipline of improvisation, is that the improvisers, they have to really go by who they are and what the situation is. So if they don't know enough about the character, they have to, in my studio, they have to say, stop, Stan, I'm sorry, I don't know enough about this guy. I don't know what he's going to say. Okay, so let's go back and let's figure out the character. In other words, I always say this to my students, my student directors, is there's something called cause and effect. Now, a lot of directors, they only want the effect. But if you are able to create the cause, then whatever effect comes from that cause is going to be great. It's going to be fine. So you stop thinking about what incredible effect you're trying to make, but start worrying about what is the cause of that effect. In other words, everything that happened before, you have to know, because everything that happened before is going to lead to what's going to happen next, and it will lead naturally. So basically, that's my theory in a nutshell of how to use improvisation in acting and creating scripts.
So when you don't storyboard by hand at all, you're not creating dialogue.
I do.
You're kind of.
I do.
You do.
I do. And nowadays I don't do much improvisation anymore, so I'm writing by myself. Yeah. So I try to look for tools online, but they never. From the early days, there was Mind something. There was a software called Mind Master or something like that, and I was saying, wow, this is basically just what I do normally on my in my sketchbooks, yeah. And what you're trying to do is to make into a diagram or a chart the very, very complicated thing that is a full-length play, and it could be a film, it could be a novel. It's so large that you have to find a way to to make it visible to your vision, because it's a vision, and if your vision is out there and you can't really see it, how are you going to make it? So that's why you need tools. You need tools to like diagrams, like charts. And for me, what I do is they're all different for each different show, because each show has its own life, so you find a way to create a chart or a diagram for whatever show you're doing now.
And when you're creating like this, Dan, where does the viewer take role? Are you constantly thinking to them, how are they going to interpret this? What are they going to think? Do you think about them, or are you just thinking about the story?
I don't think, it sounds like disrespectful, but I don't,
Yeah.
because it's a trap to think about
Yes.
what the audience wants.
Right.
I think that's a very sort of Hollywood mentality, or a Hollywood producer mentality. Is like, let's do what, look what sold, so let's sell the same thing. you know and if you fall into that trap, you might produce something that will sell,
Hmm.
but it may not be very good, because it's not truly honest. It doesn't really come from your soul. And the
Hmm.
great works of art from all of our history is stuff that comes straight from the soul. Nobody's copying anything. So yeah, I I I I don't think about the audience when I'm writing, but they're always in my mind. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
It's like I'm not. Being in the theater. We have many colleagues in the theater, incredible artists, and they don't give a crap about what the audience.
Right.
It's like, you don't understand my play, then don't come. It's
Hmm.
like that kind of a
Hmm.
very combative sort of stance that a lot of my colleagues have. I don't have that. I'm very user friendly. I think I'm writing this for you, the audience. I hope I make it. Honestly, I make it a gift for you. That's what I'm trying to do.
I know, like Quentin Tarantino has been very vocal about that. It's like, I make movies for myself, and you come watch if you want.
I
Rick
don't believe
Rubin.
that.
You don't
I
believe it,
don't believe,
huh?
because I really think he has a definite link with his audience.
He has a
And
link. Yeah.
he cares about them. He does. He
Interesting.
does.
Because
Yeah.
Rick Rubin will say that too. Like, the listener comes last. I release what I really like, and
Right.
you're right. It is a trap.
It. Well, I can say that too, and it may sound that's what I'm saying. Is it sounds like we don't care about the
It's
audience.
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not the
but
case.
we
Yeah.
do. It's
Yeah.
like, am I thinking about the audience when I'm writing? No, I'm not. I'm thinking about what pleases me, because
Right.
the important thing that goes on stage is what can go through my eyes. It's like,
Mm.
I'm the final quality control. You're not controlling my quality. I'm controlling
Mm.
it. But at the same time, at the very base of my creativity is you, the audience, and so you can't say that I'm not thinking of you. It's just that when I'm making decisions, I'm not. I'm doing it based on me, what pleases me,
Mm.
and I
Mm.
have to. I have to believe in that. That's my faith. If I can't believe my own eyes and my own senses, then I should retire.
Mm.
Basically, yeah.
I guess, and I have that too sometimes with the podcast too. I get people say, well, what about the audience? And I say, well, I want whoever's listening and watching to trust me enough to know that I'm asking my guests questions that I truly want answered. I would think that's what you're asking too. You're creating this art, what you're creating, and you're asking the audience to trust you because you like it. Therefore, if you like it, you're hoping they will as well. You don't want to release something that'll just appeal to them and not to you.
That makes
Another way of
sense.
saying it.
And also another way of putting it is, that if you trust me, you come with me, and I'm going to take you
Mm.
somewhere that you may not never have been before. It's
Mm.
like, a lot of my work is, many people call it ahead of its time. I would say it's slightly ahead of its time. I mean, if I were Vincent van Gogh, I would be too far ahead of my time that I would not be able to sell a single painting in my life. Or
Hmm.
I think he sold one to his brother.
Right.
But I mean, so sad, because everyone loves Van Gogh, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in the wrong era, if what you love is not what people love, what can you do? It's like, I'm very blessed that I'm in an age where my audience is with me, and I
Mm.
also think back in history, like, you have all these very popular writers, like, I'm thinking Scribe and Sardou in 19th century France, and I mean, they were the greatest playwrights of their time, but you don't really hear much about them anymore.
Right.
You hear about Ibsen and Strindberg, and who didn't sell many tickets at the box office, necessarily. So it's a very interesting thing. Is you trust me, I take you. I might take you somewhere beyond what you think, and I think that's good. It's like my play "A Dream Like a Dream," which I'm going to be performing in Shanghai at the end of the month. It's an 8-hour play, and who goes to an 8-hour play, right? But we announced the tickets last week, and it's sold out in a few hours. So
Wow.
and it's not cheap to see this 8-hour show.
Yeah.
And it's like people go and they're brought to a new place that is not really far. It's not totally far away from, it's like maybe Joey, it's like if you're sitting on your couch going on a binge for some sort of series. It feels like that more than
Right.
anything else. But you're in the theater.
Which people do all the time now. People are what they binge
Exactly.
series on the streaming services. So getting back to the process, Stan, you create characters, you're creating scenes. At what point does it kind of take over? I always hear these stories about these musicians that don't, they feel it's coming, it's incoming. Keith Richards is famous in saying, okay, something's coming in now, and then they continue to write. I mean, at what point does inspiration take over? Bob Dylan wrote Along the Watchtower, and within a couple weeks he sees Jimi Hendrix playing it and says that's the way it should be played. I'm never going to play it again. It's not my song. I'm giving myself chills. And he never performed it again. He just felt it came to him, but it wasn't his. Do you feel that too sometimes?
Oh, yes. It happens all the time. When inspiration comes, I've been doing it long enough. Like when it first started coming, I would be, whoa, what's going on here?
Wow.
But when you done it, like I've been doing it for over 40 years, yeah, it's here now. Okay, all right. And then sometimes you get inspiration and you start jotting things down, and you say, wait a minute, nope, this isn't very good.
Wow.
This is a bad inspiration day. It's a cheaty inspiration day. You think it's good, it's not going to work. You get to a point.
Wow.
Dylan definitely was at that point. Keith Richard was at that point where you know what works and what doesn't work, and I explained in my book that was my best lesson in my creative life, is when my teacher taught me, hey, you screwed up because you didn't know what works and what doesn't work. And this was when I was a student, and I was saying, wow, that I wasn't able to process that at the moment, but I said, yes, this is something I need to strive for, is that to know what's going to work. That's why when the lousy inspiration comes, you go, nope, it's not going to work, forget it. And when my students, if they give me an outline for a play, I will look at it and I say, go for it. Or I will look at it and say, hey, I'm sorry, this is never going to work. Like I remember many years ago in Beijing, two students very enthusiastically told me, they said that we have this great script, this great story. I said, tell me. Oh, it's about this clone, and he doesn't know he's cloned, and he's living in this basement, and blah blah blah. And finally one day, I said, sorry, it's not going to work. And it sounds great, but I said, you have not grabbed the story by the horn. You don't know that all the details that you're going to need to put in there are not going to make sense, and so your story is not going to make sense. Sorry.
Wow. You mentioned your book, Creativity.
Creativity is how I would pronounce it.
Tree, excuse me. Of course, there's a T there.
Said it rhymes with artistry, yeah. Chemistry.
Artistry, creativity, yeah. What do you want the reader to come away with? Why write the book now?
Well, the book was originally in Chinese, was written 20 years ago in 2006. It has sold 1 million copies.
Wow.
In the Chinese world. And people are actually developing a curriculum, a department of creativity. 8 universities are now doing a department of creativity based on my book. In other words, my book will be the core curriculum. So I've always wanted to put it in English. It's just that I'm just working so hard on new work that finally in the last 5 years I said, I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to translate it. I'm not going to put it through some machine and make it into English. That's not going to work. I'm going to rewrite this whole thing word by word. Also adding in what I've learned about creativity over the past 20 years, putting it in. And so we have this book called Creativity Tree. And what I want the readers to get from this is that the first thing is that you are a creative being. Creativity is in you from the moment you're born. You have it. All of us have it. I will not deny anyone. Everyone has creativity. The problem is we have, in differing levels, blocked this creativity. And we block it from childhood. Our parents do it to us. Our schools do it to us. Even though they love us, they do it to us. And how do we unblock this thing, this beautiful energy of creativity? This is what the book explains, and it's doable. There is a path, because I've been doing it long enough to be able to not only doing it, but teaching it, teaching directing, teaching playwriting, teaching acting long enough to realize that actually, if you slow down the process of what really happens in those so-called divine moments of inspiration, you can actually see what's going on. It's like if we were now equipped with a instant replay, if like the inspiration for Secret Love came into my mind, and if that moment we can slow it down and play it back, it's like Joey. It's like what do you call it? Coach's challenge on on the NFL in the NFL, right?
Right.
When did the guy go out of bounds? Okay, you frame by frame, and then you see, okay, this is a completed catch. Okay, for inspiration when it comes, my point is that if you slow it down enough, you're going to see there's not going to be a divine being or a muse or someone who comes into your mind and tells you what to do. Everything comes from you. Everything comes from inside you. If you slow it down enough, you see, oh, this character came from that day at that coffee shop when I saw this guy. And oh, this character came from when I was on the boat and I saw this woman, and oh, this character came just from reading the newspaper yesterday. You can see how all these things are coming into your mind. And your mind is like an app that can process all these things and create, I would call it pulling from different files to create a new file. And that new file is your project, is your creative project. So if my readers can take that away from my book, I'm very happy.
What do you think you mentioned schools and kind of the environment, but what are some other real killers that get in the way of creativity that we have to unblock?
Well, the obvious ones are when you're trying to do something creative and then someone says, Joey, don't sing, you can't sing. And those are the obvious ones. But the more subtle ones are the fact that you have to realize that there are so many labels stuck on things these days. And to be creative, you have to take away labels. So like this is a podcast. Okay, what's a podcast? Why is there a label called podcast put on this thing? Can we call it an interview, or can we call it a dialogue?
Conversation?
Or can we call it a conversation? Or what is it? It's two minds blending. If you can take away that one label, then you're liberated to do other things. So if you can see that, everything you see in life has a label on it. And why? Why are these? It's a car. That's a car. That's an airplane. Okay, well, they're built differently, but they're built from basically the same stuff. It's just different stuff that's coming together to make these things, And we all have labels, and then we all have likes and dislikes. And oh, I hate that. Oh, I love that. And hating and loving is also putting labels onto things. So if you're really creative, you're not hating or loving anything. You're just looking at. You're just chilling. You're looking at the world. You're letting it soak in, and wow, it's such an amazing, wonderful experience to just be there, be alive, and then the inspiration comes. That's my experience, basically.
Is your favorite project always the one you're currently work on? Do you go back and say, that one I did 30 years ago, I should have changed a little bit? Do you?
Sometimes I do that, but I'm basically, we're in the business where the opening night comes, and that's it. It's like,
Right.
if I'm working in America, opening night comes and I'm literally, that's it, because then that your hotel is, the next day you're not allowed to live in that hotel anymore unless you
Wow.
pay your yeah, you're gone. Your plane
Wow.
ticket is for, but my own work, like I recently opened a new play called Descent in Taipei just a few weeks ago, and I'm still tinkering with it, and I can, even Secret Love and Peach Blossom Man, 40 years later, I'm still tinkering with it. But if I
Wow.
don't get to revisit it in performance, I don't think about it. It's like, okay, it's done. And of course, in our business, you're never going to be satisfied. I've made two feature films, and I've looked back at them and I said, why didn't I shoot this?
Mm.
This scene should have been shot with a different angle, or I should have. Why didn't I cover that scene? Blah blah blah. You just hate yourself for things you didn't do, but at the same time, you can't regret it. You
Right.
can't regret it.
What if discipline wasn't about punishment, but about unlocking your best self? I spent 2.5 years writing Discipline for Greatness because discipline changed my life. And I know it can change yours too. This isn't theory. Inside, you'll find real, practical steps you can use immediately to focus better, build stronger habits, reduce stress, accomplish your goals, and bring more balance to your life. Whether you're trying to get healthier, improve your career, or simply feel more control, this book gives you the framework. Start today. Grab your copy of Discipline for Greatness at joeypins.com/book. Thank you. Yeah, I had specifically have a real problem staying with me. I've done over 800 of these now, and I think I've watched
Wow.
maybe a half one. I can't listen to myself. The voice, it just does something, and I do some kind of squinting thing when I'm listening. I can't watch myself. So I mean, I have a hard problem of just watching me, and I think to my
But
constantly,
why?
there's
You're
no
great,
bigger critic than
Joey.
myself. There's no bigger
No, no,
critic than
no, no, no,
myself.
no. I
I
think
should
you're
have
too
asked that.
critical. I think you're too critical
Perhaps
of
there's
yourself.
no bigger critic than me, but my point to that is there's certain musicians who won't play, they won't play their music that they wrote 30 years ago, right? Even though that's the hit and that's the reason why everybody came, they just won't do it. You still go back and look at those things fondly, but you still criticize yourself a little bit on some of the things you could have done.
Yeah, it's like I just got a letter from Athens, an email saying they would like to perform one of my plays from
Wow.
15 years ago, and I said, sure, that's great, but if they do it, I would like to have one more crack at that script, and do a
Ah,
little this tweaking here and there. But back to what you were saying, Joey, you're
interesting.
great,
Yeah.
because there's no other way to gauge this but to say, what are your guests saying, and
Mm.
what you've been doing today is you've been bringing out a lot of stuff. I mean, I do so many interviews, for my plays, all these years. I've said a lot of things I've never said before today, and i
Hmm.
and I think, Joey, that's you. It's you. You're making me comfortable. You're asking the right questions, so please don't be so hard on yourself.
I appreciate that, and I'm working on taking compliments. I really do appreciate that. And like, how do you know you got the right actor for the role?
You often don't, and often
Really?
and often I work with the person who is not the right actor. That's life.
What happens
It's
then?
what happens then is, you, with your skills, with my skills as a director, I make him work. I let him work.
Huh,
I let
huh.
him be, what's the word, functional in the role.
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, he may not be great, but at least he will function. It's like a play of mine, called Go. Actually, that the poster there. It's a 5.5 hour play. I recently redid it in Shanghai, and I have a new cast of 3 or 4 people, and they all just light up the play like it never had been before. Which means I
wow.
didn't have the right actors before, and
Hmm.
so fine. It's like, it's a live thing. It's not like theater. Theater is live. It's like, it's always living. So whenever you redo something, or every night you do anything, there's the possibility of something new happening. And that's the way our lives are in the theater, because we live with that, which means also it could be negative. You could have a disaster happening in the theater tonight, or you could have something wonderful happening, and the audience, it's rather fickle. You bought a ticket for tonight and you saw this, you didn't see that. you know you're supposed to, if you're on Broadway, you're supposed to see the same thing every night, but it's always slightly different.
Describe the audiences between America and Shanghai and
Taipei, yeah. I think audiences are audiences. We are all human beings. My work so far has resonated on both East and West.
Amazing.
Every single city will be different. Like if I'm in Taipei, in Taiwan, that's different from Kaohsiung in Taiwan. Okay, if I'm in Shanghai, it's different from Beijing. Okay, so the audiences in Beijing will be a little more quieter, and they'll save all of their energy for the end, when they might stand up in applause and in crazy applause. And in Shanghai, they might be chattering to themselves, saying,
Wow.
saying who's this guy's that other, they're just explaining the plot to each other, or whatever, yeah. And then there's a warmth, to the audiences in Shanghai, the audiences in Taipei. I was in Taipei just a few weeks ago with this new play, Descent, and I was so moved at the end when there was this thunderous applause for the opening premiere.
Wow.
And I'm going, because we don't hear that anymore in Shanghai. You know why? Because everyone's taking a photo
Really?
of the curtain call. When the audience, when the cast comes on for the curtain call, the audience is, you can't clap with one hand, right? So they're all taking pictures. So I've gotten used to that. For the last, even before COVID, it's been like that. There's been less and less audience applause. But in Taipei, the audience knows that they want to respect this moment, and they're going to say, "This is for the cast. This is for the creators of the show." And man, they clap their hearts out. It's interesting how the digital age has changed things in a subtle way.
Just watching. That's fair to say, because certainly a New York audience is going to be different from a Los Angeles audience, right? I mean, very different type of, just what's the old saying? Don't live in New York too long, you'll get too hard, and don't live in California too long, you get too soft, right? So, there's definitely a system there. Why is Hollywood broken?
Oh, I think there's a total lack of confidence in creativity. That's the way I feel. I've spent a little time in LA. One of my daughters lives there, and my son-in-law is a filmmaker. And I realized that there is the creative aspect. I think Hollywood has gotten more creative in a way. There's so many brilliant, talented people there, but they're not taking any chances. They're going with what they think is safe. And what they think is safe is not decided by any artist or any script or anything, but by numbers. And I think this is like a demon for our society. It's like, if everything that we consume is being decided by numbers, what is that? What do you call that? What happened to our own discretion on everything, right? And about everything, even about the milk you drink, or whatever. Are you drinking the best milk you can, or are you having the best eggs you can? Who knows? It's, in the end, it's all about numbers, and that to me is very, very disappointing, and our societies are all being affected by this.
I heard you say in an interview, Stan, you asked a composer, I think it was, and you asked him how's the talent these days, and he said the talent is incredible, the dexterity of their fingers playing piano, etc. But the creativity is lost because it's a bit squashed, because it's after these numbers and people don't want to take chances.
His exact words were, "The fingers are incredible, but where is the music?"
That's right. That's what you said. Where's the music?
And that's like, I mean, Keith Richards didn't have the greatest fingers, right?
Right. Still
but
does.
He had the music.
Yes, he does. Yeah, yes, he does. Yeah.
Even Dylan. Dylan
Right.
didn't play much guitar or
Not
harmonica,
the greatest voice.
and not the greatest voice, but the
Right.
music was the
Music was
greatest.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a big difference there.
yeah.
And movies certainly always wanted to make money, but not at the kind of degree and philosophy and that we see now. Is artificial intelligence hurting or helping art?
My personal individual point of view is that it's hurting art.
Hmm.
If you're going to use, I mean, you can use AI for, like, I don't know, Joey, maybe setting up this podcast,
Hmm.
some clerical work. But if you're gonna, once a journalist in Shanghai, at the Uzun Festival, came to me and said, "Hey, Stan, I asked AI to write a play based on your work.
Huh.
So a work that mimics Stan Lai's plays." And I said, and she showed me. It was. I must say, it wasn't very interesting. So, of course, they're getting better and better, and they're getting better and better as we speak. But my feeling is that AI can write songs, it can write plays, and I'm sure they will be passable work. I mean, if they were
Hmm.
in a classroom, they would get C's at least, but they would not be able to make, at least so far, the great works of mankind, humankind,
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
not going to be made by AI. At least this day we're speaking. I don't see it. Yeah.
You mentioned before, Stan, that everybody has creativity. Are we born with a certain amount with it? You think, or you think is it learned, or is it are we born with it? You believe
We're born with it. We're born
everyone?
everyone, and it's boundless. It's boundless. And the thing is the amount you get is depends on how much you can unblock, how much you
Hmm.
can unlearn of everything that you've been learning ever since you're a kid.
And
I,
that
I
is the
have
big
a
thing.
I have a very sad story in the book. Well, I was on the street in Shanghai, and I saw this mother bringing her 5-year-old boy around, and the boy looked at the sky and said, "Mama, look at the dog." And the mother slapped him and said, "That is a cloud." And I didn't know these people, so I wasn't able to say
Ah,
anything, right? And then they left. And I was so sad. I was saying, "Wow,
wow.
that boy is never gonna see a dog in the sky again."
Right. Right.
And these are the things that add up, and just a little instant like that, maybe you to your own kids, you will be saying something. I mean, you have to. Your kids are growing up. You have to find some way to get them to do something, or some way to limit them to do something. And at that time, what you're doing also is limiting their creativity, which you don't know and which you're not trying to do. But it's what we do all the time, unfortunately. It's the life is built sort of that way, is that we're all creative, we all lose it. How do we get it back? Some of us lose less of it, like me. I think I lost very little of it when I was a kid. Thanks to my parents.
I see.
Yeah, and then so it wasn't that big a struggle to let it channel out, But I think for many people, unwittingly, even us to our kids, it happens.
That is a real sad story, Stan. I
Oh
remember
yeah.
going to my daughter when she was in eighth grade. My daughter's very creative, straight A student, by the way. We were at the parent teacher meeting, and one of the teachers was like, she has a problem. She looks out, and looks outside very often. Maybe there's something we could do about that. There's drugs that she could take. And I said to my wife, I said, this is an A student. I will continue to encourage her to look outside. This is let her do what she wants to do. If she was failing everything, that would be a very but she likes to dream and it's terrible.
Joey, let me give you a little story. I was back in Washington D.C., where I was born
Yeah.
last year. I hadn't visited in many years, and I was back at the apartment where I grew up, and I'm looking for this little sort of hill next to it. I couldn't find it, but I actually found the spot where I would go after school every day. In those days, I walk home to school. I was 5 years old, 6 years old, and I would just lie down on that hill and look at the clouds and just
Wow.
stare at the sky for who knows how long, because I had the key. I had the key on my necklace, My parents weren't home. I could go home anytime. But please tell your daughter that this is how I spent my childhood, just lying down looking at the sky.
Hmm.
And I didn't hear any teacher saying, "Don't do that, Stan."
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
terrible.
Yeah, you see
Just like that mother you saw in
how
Shanghai.
yes, and exactly how easily people can just give you wrong advice, and
Squash
say
it. Yeah.
you shouldn't be looking outside the window. Why shouldn't I be looking outside the window?
Yeah.
Because you're not concentrating on the class, But she's straight A's, so who's not concentrating on the class, right?
Apparently she could do both. And so creativity comes also in many forms. We're talking about music, we're talking about playwright, we're talking about movies. But sure, anybody can there's so many outlets. There's painting, there's drawing, there's even in some of the work, plumbers and there's certain artistry to what they do. And there's, I was programming for a while and developing, and I thought that was a very artistic way of being able to communicate to the computer, to tell it to create something that I wanted to create. But there's many layers of it. We can't forget that.
Well, Joey, you move into a difficult topic because not only are there many layers and they're wonderful layers, but you can also move to the dark side with creativity. Because I spend a lot of time in my book talking about events like 9/11, more recently when Israel used beeper phones as bombs, you know. And the New York Times, I remember the title was something like creativity. There was creativity in the title for that. It's like amazing creativity used for what? And I'm thinking, wow, when we talk about like generals, like even from the Trojan War or whatever, we talk about how brilliant all these people were. Hey, they were brilliant at killing people, you know. So if you think about that, creativity can be used for anything. So the question is, if you want to channel your creativity, you really have to ask yourself, why? Why do I want to do this? What? Of course, you don't need an answer. You can just say, I just do it because I like it. That's fine. But in the end, if your work is for yourself, there's no problem. You're just doing it and you're enriching yourself. But if you're doing it for a public, you have to ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this? And if the answer is simply a paycheck, then you're going with what your boss wants you to do. But if you're really trying to do something from your soul, then what is it? And why does it need to be public? These are the tough questions I ask in the book, because you can't say that these people who are making war machines and stuff aren't creative. They're demonically creative, and that's the problem. Yeah, is that it can go either way. I remember I was in Prague one year, and I was at the graduation ceremony for PhD students at Charles University, and I was so moved when the the person making the speech said, "Okay, now we're going to give you your diplomas, your PhDs. Now you will have to all take a vow." And they all vowed that everything they learned as PhDs, and this is a vow that comes from 1,000 years ago, is to be used for the good of humankind. And it sounds normal, but that also means that you can use everything you learned to the detriment of humankind.
Certainly.
Yeah. It's double edged.
Very good point. Very good point, Stan. The most difficult part about writing a play is what?
Oh, it's so large and it has so many components that you can't keep track of it. It's like you're trying to build a forest and you're working only on a leaf of a tree, And so how to grasp the whole forest? That is the real craft of the playwright. Yeah, and when you just start, I mean, even in school, you're probably writing scenes, you're writing dialogues, and those are just like a small sentence in a long speech, And what are you trying to say? How do you control this whole thing that is not only oral but visual, and actually, has so many facets? How are you going to control that? That's what's hard about it.
Wow. I asked earlier, Stan, about the actors, if they're the wrong actors. Should writers often be directors as well, or should they be separate?
Depends totally on the person. I direct all the work I write,
You
and
do.
I consider it one job. You see, to me, it's like writing and
Hmm.
directing is one thing because the final product is not on paper. The final product is on stage. So I'm in charge of that thing on stage. When I'm writing in my computer or on paper, that's just for rehearsal purposes. It's like a musical score. In the end, the musical score is not the music. It's the performance itself that's important. So if I were a composer, I'd also demand to be the conductor.
Hmm.
So yeah,
And the
but
role of the director is what?
everything, everything that happens that you see on if you're watching a play, whenever whatever the lights go on, the sound comes in, the music, which actor comes in from stage left or stage right, stays how long, how fast is the dialogue, how when does the actor pause here, silence there, it's the whole thing. Everything you see is controlled by the director.
I remember once we seeing an interview with Gary Oldman, a great actor, and he it was
Yes.
in Dark Knight Returns, like the one of the famous directors. But Gary had a dialogue, and the
Hmm.
director said to him in just a couple sentences, "Do it again. It's more urgent." And so
Hmm.
Ullman said, "That's incredible direction. That's incredible direction because I understood what he meant and I was able to continue." So the director has to really simplify it, work with each actor differently because obviously there's different personalities, but it's a big task.
Sounds, I mean, it sounds a little bit like what I would say because I like to be very simple when I talk to
Mm,
actors. Sometimes it's just a matter of pacing. I say, hey, slow that down. That line
mm,
has to be slow. And I don't need to explain what that means psychologically. The actor will say, oh, okay, oh, I get it. I get it. And,
mm,
and it
mm.
also, they suddenly are able to assimilate what happened before and what happened again. And this line is slow. So often it's a huge puzzle of rhythms and
Hmm.
tempos and things in not only acting but all the technical things that happen like the lighting, projections, music, everything. That's what you have to like. I'm just thinking back at the world premiere of my play Descent just a few weeks ago, and the big question was, do you want a curtain at the beginning, do you want the
Hmm.
curtain to be in or out, and so
Wow.
these little things, they're all up to me.
Wow. What
and
did you
and back
decide?
to your question though,
Yeah.
I don't think every writer is suited to do that. It's You have to have a certain
Ah.
disposition, right?
Yeah, because I've heard of some sets where the writers are showing up and they're just kind of or the writers showing up and they just end up kind of being a nuisance a little bit. And
Yeah.
who knows if it's true or not? But I think the
Mhm.
King, the writer, it was kind of notorious for that, right? He didn't like a lot of the
Stephen
movies
King.
because
Huh?
Stephen
Yeah.
King, yeah, it didn't
Uh-huh.
represent the book well enough, and yeah, I could have that wrong. I could certainly have that wrong.
Well,
Jen,
they
has
all
there
have. There's
their
always
own
in
vision?
contracts now. It's written. You can't do this. You
Right,
can't be on
right.
the set or
You
whatever.
have the role. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Fascinating. Is there something, Stan, that you believed really deeply, deeply 10 years ago that you no longer believe now?
What a good question. Not really. I think I've been fairly consistent all my life. Um, it's just things that deepen as I grow older.
Hmm.
What I was just saying. I have no regrets. And you can just say that when you're younger. You live without regrets. But then when you get older, you say, "Am I really not regretting my life? Can I stop now? Um, when is enough enough?" Uh, the realization deepens. The fact that I write in my book that you have to have this ability to see all phenomena as equal in order to be a
Hmm.
really good writer. In other words, no story is greater than any other story. In other words, if you're looking at what's happening like on the streets of Minneapolis today, okay, and you say, "Wow, that's a great material for a play." Well, look outside your window like your daughter is, and maybe you're seeing a flash of sunshine. And
Hmm.
that is no less a content matter for a beautiful play.
Hmm.
So I could say that 20 years, 10 years ago, I was a big advocate of all things are equal in terms of creativity. But now I have a deeper realization of that, and I
Mm-hmm.
would say I would be able to write a play out of our dialogue today. A podcast starts, a play starts with a podcast,
Hmm.
or I'm looking out my window and seeing, a tree, and the tree could be the start of a play. I
Wow.
have a deeper realization of the things that I believed in. And I think, thank you for your question, because I realize I'm blessed that I don't have to contradict myself in the middle of my
Hmm.
life, Yeah.
Is there a question, Stan, you wish more people would ask you?
Ah, what a good question. What a good question. Um, you know, I would just like people to know me more as I am,
Hmm.
because when I mean, I'm not that well known in the West, but in Asia, I'm not able to really like be seen in public that much. And
Wow.
whenever, people, yeah. So I just I just when I walk by people, let's say at the Wuzhen Theater Festival, which I helped to found, and people say, "Oh, that's Stan Lai," and in fact they would be like 3 feet away from me, and so they would be pointing like Joey. If someone was right next to you, say, "That's Joey Pinz," and it's like I don't exist as a person, it's like
Interesting.
and how can I let people just know me more as a person, not
Hmm.
as some exactly like someone who's not a person.
Hmm.
That yeah.
So, say I started my company back in the '90s, and I was working way too hard and not paying attention to myself. I was in my 20s, I felt I was invincible, and I was putting back exercise and not eating properly, just trying to grow my business. The next thing I know, I'm in front of the doctor, and she tells me I'm at 340 pounds. So
Wow.
I
No
had gained all the
way.
yeah, I had
No
gained all this term.
way. How
I knew
how
I
tall
was
are you,
getting.
Joey?
I'm 6 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I knew that I was getting out of shape. Didn't know it was that bad. But the next thing rocked my world that she said, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My daughter was just born. So
Wow. Wow.
instead of motivating, it angered me, right? So I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel, right? This is my pie hole, Stan. I did this to myself. It's much bigger than me. I can abuse myself all I want, but I have this family now. I have this beautiful daughter that somehow I'm responsible for bringing into this world. And I have to look beyond myself and stop being so selfish. So I spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 130 pounds, and kept it off.
Wow.
So these are lifelong changes, right? You can't look at a lot of people look at losing weight as like crossing a finishing line and I'm done. That's not the case. You've got to continue with these traits and routines that you set up. So when
Wow.
people ask me, what's your secret? How did you do that? I say there's no secret. You've alluded to it a couple times. Discipline. I feel routine, motivation, focus, all under what I call the discipline spectrum. But I wonder, Stanley, how does discipline play a role in your life?
Oh, thank you for the story. Very, very inspiring. Wow, you did that in 6 months? My God,
6, 7 months, yeah.
that's unheard
Kept it
of.
off.
It's unheard
Yeah.
of. You have incredible discipline. You know, there's something called discipline, and there's something also called stamina. And
Hmm.
I think you need stamina to have discipline, at least in
Hmm.
our business. Like I often get requests for like, even from friends who say, "Hey, can my son hang around your studio and watch you work?" And I say, "Sure, sure, come on over." And they don't last 2 days, because they
Wow.
can't keep up with us, because
Huh.
our work is it's like, very, very intense work, 8 or 10 hours a day, and you have to be there at every moment. You
Wow.
can't just say, "Okay, I'm out of here for an hour." Actors can, because actors, like if they're not working on the scene, they can go and have a snack or whatever. But I
Hmm.
have to be on, like, for whatever duration that I'm working. So it's the same if I'm shooting a film. It's like it's so intense, and I think there's something to do with discipline and intensity. I don't know if you've explored that before, but there's something to do with
Intensity.
stamina and discipline. If you don't have stamina, it's hard to be disciplined.
Hmm.
Now, the discipline to direct a play, I
Hmm.
have, and I know. And another very important thing about that is that You have to know you just don't work. That's not how you succeed. You have to plan it. You have to know that if a play is a meal that needs to be cooked, this meal takes a certain amount of time to be able to be cooked. When you start preparing your meal, you can't be shouting around saying, "Why isn't it done?" Because it's not done. You're just starting to you're just chopping your vegetables now. You're not you haven't even heated your pan. So there's a process to everything, and you need the discipline to be able to sit back and say, "Okay, today, my God, the play looks terrible, but 2 weeks from now, it's going to look different.
Wow.
And you will be able to set your goal on how it's supposed to look 2 weeks from now. And that is like if you're losing weight and you're saying, wow, this is so unencouraging. Like I didn't lose much. But a month later, have a look at me and then really work toward that. And you know, as a director, I know what it takes to make the play look better in 2 weeks and then look great in 4 weeks and then be able to see the audience. The audience will be able to see the play in its best form. So you need the discipline to stop and say, wait. Why am I shouting at the actors? We just started. They're not supposed to be accomplished at this moment. The whole play is not supposed to be totally done now. So you have to know the stages of what you're doing, and then stay disciplined to have your objectives on each stage of what you're trying to accomplish.
Wow. I hear you say stamina, but I also hear patience, although you didn't say that word.
You're right. What I'm saying is patience needs discipline.
Yeah.
Because we're often, the popular view of a director is, standing around shouting all the time.
Right. It would blow with a horn, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not me. I'm known for being very quiet or very just. Even if I see serious problems, I know that shouting isn't going to solve them. So I find there's also a discipline there to not blow your top, to be patient, and then say, let's figure out how to do this. And so I will start talking with an actor, and then figuring out why the actor is doing what he or she is doing, and then finding the ways to create the causes that will create the effects that they can use. So it's a sophisticated dance, and you have to figure.
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypinz.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. I remember hearing stories about Clint Eastwood directing, and he would never yell action. He would just kind of turn his fingers like this, just, let the actors, it's, so when you were that kid in Washington, D.C. on that hill, looking up at the sky with with your key around your neck, Stan, was patience instilled in your, I'm sorry, I said patience. Isn't that interesting? I meant to say discipline. Was discipline instilled with your parents? They let you be creative, but was it talked about? Was it exemplified?
No, and neither of them were in creative arts or anything. My dad was a diplomat. My mom was a homekeeper. And later she worked as a secretary. My dad passed very, very early. And I saw that discipline in my mom, that she didn't break down. She didn't, she was so, strength. Now, discipline and strength, is there a line we can draw between those two? It's like she continued. She had not been working for many years, and then suddenly, when my dad got sick with cancer, she started working again. And as kids, we're saying, "What? Why is mom working?" And then my dad passed. You see,
Mm.
so she had it all planned out. So
Wow.
and she never said anything. It's like, wow, to have the strength to do that. That teaches you more than anything that she could have told me. You know,
Mm.
just
Mm.
what she did,
Hmm.
which was to raise two kids. And do it all by herself and not complain and just do it.
Wow.
And that's, I guess, that instilled in me a lot. Like it's like discipline is something that we don't talk about because we don't need to. It's something that, of course you need discipline. I think I was born with a fair amount of it. I'm able to discipline has anything to do with concentration.
Mm.
uh, I think I think I'm very good at that. And to be and intensely concentrated, that's probably a gift of mine and gift of many people in the arts or whatever, to have an intense concentration, which you need to be able to actually uh, really make things happen, and change and make things change things. So I don't know. I guess I got that. My dad was a very disciplined guy. Um, I would I would watch and marvel when I would after school. I would go to his office, and he was in the foreign ministry, as I said, for Taiwan.
Hmm.
And there would be this pile of documents that he had to go through before he'd take me home. And I would watch him intensely concentrated on a document. And
Wow.
then he would use his calligraphy brush in Chinese and write on it his comments on this, whatever it was. And then the next one came, and then it was in English. And he would use his brush and write his comments in English with his
Hmm.
calligraphy brush. And I'm going, wow, it's like, you know, it's like writing an opinion on a legal document using a paintbrush.
Hmm. Amazing.
Yeah. In different
Absolutely.
languages, by the way.
Yeah, right. And being able to bounce between the two. Yeah. What
Right.
motivates you now, Stan? What's your motivation?
My motivation is to be of benefit to people.
Hmm.
Meaning, if I'm writing a new play, if it's just for myself, forget it. I don't need that. I really think if my book Creativity is of use. I mean, it's of use to people. It's not there to show off. I don't need to show off. I have
Hmm.
enough on my resume to not have to add anything all my life. So how can I be of deeper use to people? And I think at this stage in my career, I see myself more as a bridge, like a bridge between East
Hmm.
and West, or even between Taiwan and China, between
Hmm.
cultures, between creativity and non-creativity. I mean, that's what I look at myself as. I don't need to accomplish anything more, but I do hope that I can be of use and benefit to people.
So I hear you say impact.
Hmm.
You want to be positive impact. So
Positive, yes.
yeah,
Benefit, yeah,
benefit, right?
yeah.
So given that motivation of, like you say, of being a benefit and impact, how do you measure success?
Yeah, you measure success by your motivation, basically. That's what I talk about a lot in the book, because motivation has a lot to do with creativity. So if your motivation is to score $1 million, then whether you succeeded or not depends on whether you made $1 million or not.
Hmm.
So if my motivation is to benefit people, then I'm not going to be able to see the results or quantify the results, but just feel, like, yeah. So I saw a review of my book on Amazon that said the reader was so touched by the book and said that this is more also about life as about
Hmm.
creativity. So um, the reader said that they should go back and learn lessons in life, basically, in order to be more creative, and that's basically what the book is about.
Hmm. What is the role of a critic in art?
uh, you know the nasty lines, don't you? That if you if you can't do it, meaning you can't create, you teach.
Yeah.
And if you can't teach, you become a critic.
Ah.
I'm sorry, that's kind
They're
of
low
nasty.
on the
That's
pole.
very, very nasty. I'm sorry I said that. But I think critics are very, there's a whole spectrum of critics.
Yes, sir.
Some are really talented, brilliant, and are very helpful to the reader or the audience. Some they're always a bit into themselves, and I think I like critics are who aren't those, like, they're trying to tell you how much they like a film or they don't like a film. It's like they're more important than the film.
Right.
Sometimes that happens, but I think critics are very helpful if they really show their knowledge about the medium they're talking about, and they are really able to give you an objective view of what they saw. So they're important to society. That you need them. But in these days, Joey, anyone can be a critic, right? Anything you can write on Instagram, or you can just on TikTok, you can do this and that, and you become an influencer, and then that's it. So.
They do have a role, and it's really up to them on how they use or abuse it. I guess is what you're saying.
It's like anything in our society these days. There's a role, and then there's very, very wonderful people who do it, and then there's amateurs and beginners. And the problem is the amateurs and beginners are getting more and more of a foothold on what people think these days.
Absolute pleasure talking to you today, Stan Lai. I know we had to move this around a little bit. I've been looking forward for a long time. And so if people want to get in touch with you, I'll put the link up for Amazon. You have a Wikipedia page as well.
Yes.
You have YouTube and Facebook, etc. I'll make sure to put all those links in.
Thank you so much, Joey. It's been my pleasure. I'm very, you brought out a lot in me today.
Thank you so much.
I'm a little surprised.
Next time we're in the same city, perhaps we'll get a cup of tea together. Love to meet you face to face.
Yes. You have my email, so let's be in touch.
Very good. Thank you so much today. Thank you, Stan.
I will follow your podcasts with great interest.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Joey. Be well.
Be well. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypinz.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.